let me give you some background to the Green Climate Fund. Previously, countries, the Global Environmental Facility was the financial mechanism for the convention, which meant that all of your activities, etc., apart from the bilateral donors, the convention funding came to countries through the GEF. Now, over the years, our experience with the mechanisms involved in accessing these funds have not been as expected. It has been difficult. And then those funds usually came to us through institutions like the World Bank, the IDB, the IFCs, etc. And what happens is that the GF, the Global Environment, first of all, the convention will have its own criteria for access and for the way funds are spent. Then the GF will have other criteria. And so when you go through these other intermediaries, there are new criteria set. So by the time the fund reaches our countries, it becomes a bit cumbersome in terms of implementation. And so countries have argued for years for what we call direct access to funds. Direct access meaning that countries and regional institutions can access funds directly from the funding mechanism. Now, the Green Climate Fund is now set up as one of the major funds for the convention. There's the Adaptation Fund, but the GCF is a major one. Major because the ambition is, and we are a little skeptical about the ability for this to be achieved, is by 2020, that fund will be capitalized at the level of 100 billion US dollars per year. It sounds a lot of money, but our work in the adaptation field shows that that's a drop in the bucket in terms of what globally we need on an annual basis to address adaptation. Nevertheless, we have to be thankful for small mercies, and the fund was more or less established and is up and running this year and has been capitalized at the level of 10.6 billion US dollars for 2015. As a result of its establishment, they had put out calls for organizations, regional organizations, and for countries to apply for accreditation. To get that accreditation, you have to go through an assessment process by the GCF, which really looks at your fiduciary management systems to see that they are up to international standards and that you're capable of handling their funds. So we went through that process. We started it in a discussion with them in Lima last December at the Conference of Parties meeting, the climate change meeting in Lima, Peru. And we were successful a few weeks ago in being accredited as a regional implementing entity. Our partner institution, the Caribbean Development Bank, is also pursuing accreditation, and we hope that very soon they will have accreditation. The other level, of course, is national implementing entities. And several of our countries are now looking at applying for what they call readiness funds from the GCF, so that any identified in-country entity can build that fiduciary capacity so that they would be accorded national implementing entity status. Now, we as a regional implementing entity, countries could now directly submit projects to the GCF through the center for projects per project, 10 to 50 million US dollars as a grant. If approved, the disbursement now comes directly through the center to the countries. And if we had a national implementing entity, directly from the GCF to that national implementing entity, without the interposition of any of the IFCs or any other organization. So we feel that this is a better arrangement. Now, our approval is for what they call small grants. If the CDB does get the approval, and we certainly hope they do, they are for medium grants, and their portfolio would be for grants and for concessional loans. And their ceiling would be $250 million US per project. So these are going to represent new opportunities for regions to define and develop programs for dealing either with adaptation or mitigation to climate change, and submit them through our national, regional implementing entities to the Green Climate Fund. And we hope that this will expedite the whole process of approval, disbursement, and implementation.
What is your vision for the 5Cs?
Well, we, especially now that we have this accreditation, we would hope that we would be able to work with countries so that we could garner resources to help them to address their climate change adaptation and mitigation programs. As a region, we have a pretty bad record of accessing available funds. The funds under the GF, different windows of the GF, we have not been able to effectively address, to effectively garner those funds for use in the region. So we're hoping that this new accreditation will be a change factor, and that we'll see better access. And more than that, even when we access funds, our record and implementation has been a bit spotty. And as a matter of fact, we have been designated as that we have an implementation deficit. We would hope that now with regional implementing entities, national implementing entities that are much more aware of the nuances in our societies, much more flexible in terms of how we approach implementation, that we'll see much more successful access and much more expeditious implementation of projects under the climate change umbrella.